Let's see, kind of with my right eye now. I have this one done. Yeah, Thursday.
The regular meeting of the St. Joseph County Council, June 13th, 2023, is now called to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation, which will be given by Councilman Schetzel.
Heavenly Father, we thank you that we live in a country where we have individual liberty. We thank you, Father God, we live in a country where, regardless of those who are in power or the bureaucracies around us, we have the right to disagree with them. We ask, Lord, for your wisdom. In Jesus' name, amen.
Next up is petitions, communication, and miscellaneous matters. May I have a motion for the minutes of the May 9th meeting?
Motion to approve minutes?
Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye. 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 Those opposed? The minutes from the May 9th meeting are approved. Next up is St. Joseph County Council Board appointments. We will start with the St. Joseph County Health Board, and I will open it for nominations.
Mr. President,
Mr. Thomas.
I have a motion to nominate Jill Van Bruni, Board of Health.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any other nominations for the St. Joseph County Health Board? Hearing none, nominations are now closed. May I have a motion on this nomination, please?
Motion to pass.
Second.
A motion to pass Jill Van Bronny to the Health Board was made by Councilman Drake. It was seconded by Councilman Thomas?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Actually, we usually don't do discussion on appointments, do we? So we'll just move to a vote. All those in favor of Jill Van Bronny being appointed to the Health Board, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
All right. We will take a roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
No.
Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
No.
Mr. Catanzarite,
No.
Mr. Tanner,
Yes.
President Root.
Yes.
Passes 1, 2, 3. Passes 6-3.
Thank you. Let the record show that Jill Van Bronny has been appointed by the County Council to the St. Joseph County Health Board by a vote of 6-3. Next up is the St. Joseph County Redevelopment Commission. Mr. O'Brien has asked to make a statement before we take nominations.
Right, thank you, Mr. Root. So as counsel, attorney for the county council, this ties into some legal proceedings, so I wanted to make sure to point out that this is not designed to indicate or acknowledge that the council's prior appointments were incorrect, but that is the contention of a litigant in pending litigation. And in conferring with the attorneys who are handling the litigation, representing the county, they felt it would be prudent to simply go through the process again. So that's why this is on the agenda for the appointments.
Thank you. I will open it for nominations to the St. Joseph County Redevelopment Commission.
Mr. President, I'd like
Mr.
to
Schetzel.
make a motion to appoint Dick File and Ben Horvath.
Dick File and Ben Horvath. Is there a second to that nomination?
Second.
Any further nominations?
Mr. Root,
Mr.
I'd
Catanzarite.
like to nominate Steve Zornig.
I'm sorry, who?
Steve Zornig.
Steve Zornick.
He was one of our applicants for that position.
Are there any further nominations?
I'll second that, by the way.
Oh, yes, do we have a second on that nomination? Okay. Yeah, do we have any further nominations? All right, nominations then are now closed. We have nominated 3 potential candidates, Dick File, Ben Horvath, and Steve Zornick. May I have a motion to appoint to
Mr.
the...
President, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Dick File and Ben Horvath.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to appoint Dick File and Ben Horvath to the Redevelopment Commission. Clerk, will you please take the roll on the motion?
Mrs. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Dick File, yes. Horvath, no.
Okay. Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Ms. Hess.
Dick File, yes. Ben Horvath, no.
Okay. Mr. Catanzarite,
Dick File, yes. Ben Horvath, no.
Mr. Tanner,
This is just a show. Yes. It's silly.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
President Root.
Yes.
I believe Dick File was 9-0 and Ben Horvath was 6-3.
Let the record show that Dick File is appointed to the St. Joseph County Redevelopment Commission by a vote of 9-0, and Ben Horvath is appointed by a vote of 6-3. Next up on the agenda is the St. Joseph County Domestic Vitality Review Team, and we are going to hold these nominations or this appointment for 1 month because there are a couple of questions on whether some of these members are still eligible to be nominated. Some of these positions need to be filled by the office that they hold, and there's some questions as to whether a couple of these individuals are still in office and therefore eligible to serve on this committee. So we will hold this until the July meeting when we receive some clarification on if everybody on the list is eligible. I believe that concludes the county council board appointments. Next up is a report from the county auditor.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Report from any county commissioner? No report, and the state of the county is being delayed at the request of the commissioner's office for 1 month until the July 2023 meeting. Report from any council special committee. Hearing none, I would like to announce before we start the bills for tonight that bill number 172 has been withdrawn at the request of the petitioner. This is the rezoning for the gas station on Dragoon Trail. So if you are here to speak for that or to participate in that bill will not be heard as it has been pulled by the petitioner from the agenda. That said, next up is first readings. Clerk, will you please read our first bill?
Bill number 76-23, collective bargaining agreement between St. Joseph County, Indiana Commissioners and the Telecommunicators of St. Joseph County, Indiana, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, petitioner PSAP.
Thank you. Bill number 76-23 is assigned to the Criminal Justice Human Services Committee.
Bill number 78-23, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154 Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property located at 51340 Bittersweet Road from B Business District and R Single Family District to B Business District. Petitioner Suck and Yoon Park.
Bill number 78-23 is assigned to the Land Use and Planning Committee.
Bill number 79-23, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Uses, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property located at 25572 and 25590 State Road 2 from C Commercial District to R Single Family District to C Commercial District. Petitioner Gurpreet Singh.
Bill number 79-23 is assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee.
Bill number 81-23, an ordinance of the St. Joseph County Council amending Title 15, Chapter 154, land usage of St. Joseph County Code to allow data center as permitted use in the I industrial district and adding a definition for data center. Petitioner, St. Joseph County Area Plan Commission.
Bill number 81-23 is assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee.
Bill number 82-23, an ordinance to terminate written commitments concerning the rezoning of property generally located at 31000 Fillmore Road. Petitioners Todd Kaminsky and Jill Odias and Kaminsky Tim. Tick each. The rest is, I'm not able to decipher that.
Thank you. Bill number 82-23 is assigned to the Land Use and Planning Committee. That concludes first readings for tonight. Next up will be first readings and public hearing. This is a bill where we intend to have the first reading and then take a motion to see if we can suspend the rules so that we can also hold the public hearing and the vote tonight. So clerk, will you please read Bill 77-23?
Bill number 77-23, an ordinance authorizing St. Joseph County, Indiana to commit to an additional term of membership in the Northern Indiana Regional Development Authority. Petitioner, St. Joseph County Council.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to hold public hearing tonight on Bill 77-23?
So moved.
Second?
Motion was made by Councilman Catanzarite. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Am I correct in that? Or, okay. You'll take it? We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules to hold public hearing and a vote on Bill 77-23 tonight. Clerk, will you please take the roll on the motion?
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
President Root.
Yes.
The motion passes 9-0.
All right, let the record show that the motion to suspend the rules was passed by a 9-0 vote. It takes a unanimous vote to suspend the rules, so the conditions have been met to move to a public hearing. We will now move to a public hearing on Bill 77-23. Is the petitioner present? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bethany Hartley. I'm President and CEO of the South Bend Elkhart Regional Partnership. Our office address is 635 South Lafayette Boulevard, Suite 123, South Bend, Indiana, 46601. I just wanted to take a few moments to thank you all again for considering this petition. I spoke with you all last month and prepared a presentation for you all. One follow-up question that you had was how much has the county matched in READY funding or RCI funding as it relates to RDA allocations? And to our investigation, the best we are aware of is when it comes to hotel motel tax for specific quality of life projects, there are investments being made on the Morris Performing Arts Center and the Potawatomi Zoo that are matching funds set aside for those projects. Additionally, just to update you all that Elkhart and Marshall counties have both passed their ordinances and have agreed to be a part of our RDA once again. So happy to answer any questions you may have or provide you any recall information from our previous conversation.
Thank you. Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Hearing none, we'll move to public hearing on Bill number 77-23. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Hi, Mr. President, members of the council. Jeff Ray, President and CEO, South Bend Regional Chamber with offices at 101 North Michigan, South Bend, Suite 300. Here tonight to echo encourage your support of the RDA. We've worked closely with the Regional Development Authority over the last few years. It has generated significant capital investment across our county in a wide variety of projects. This is our conduit to some important state funds that help us drive economic activity here. If you think about regional cities and READY and what that's done in the past, recently the Indiana General Assembly approved the next phase of Ready, and the RDA is positioned to help be that conduit to drive additional development. Just as a reminder, this is a 20% state match we get from the state, 20% local, and then 60% private investment. So what we've seen is several $100 million of investment that's come through the state funds, a lot because of the good work that the RDA is doing, and in particular, the South Bend Elkhart Regional Partnership and Ms. Hartley and her team are doing to help us. So just encourage your support of this evening, and thank you for giving it special consideration on your agenda. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Seeing no one, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Seeing no one, the public hearing on this bill is now closed. May I have a motion on 77-23?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve was made by Councilman Fig. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council comment on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 77-23 was passed by a vote of 9-0. And that concludes our first reading and public hearing for tonight. Next up is resolutions. Clerk, would you please read bill number 80-23?
Bill number 80-23, a resolution of the St. Joseph County, Indiana Council approving the appointment of Diana Perishing MEMD as the St. Joseph County Health Officer.
Petitioner, who is the petitioner on this one? The St. Joseph County Health Officer. Oh, it's for the St. Joseph. So who? Mr. Levens?
Good afternoon, Councilman Root, Council. I'm the attorney for the St. Joseph County Health Department. The Board of Health yesterday appointed Diana Purushottam as the next health officer for St. Joseph County, and we seek your approval of that appointment. I'm here with Dr. Serbin, who knows the new health officer. If you have any questions, he'd be happy to answer them. He's the current health officer.
Thank you. Any questions from the council for the health department representatives? Mr. Morton? Oh, sorry. Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, Mr. President. Could we, given that this was the first presentation of this individual, hear the credentials in which the person was considered and recommended by the board?
Sure. She did her undergrad work at the University of Toronto. She did her medical work and got her medical degree from the University of Chicago. She did her residency up in Wisconsin. She was a hospitalist at Mayo Clinic and then at Cleveland Clinic, and she now works here at South Bend Clinic and worked at Unity Hospital for a period while that was with the South Bend Clinic.
Thank you.
I just have one other question. So I read that there were 5 applicants and 2 were interviewed. Was there a reason that all 5 were interviewed?
Various reasons. I mean, proximity, credentials, resumes. The 2 that were interviewed had resumes and credentials that the Personnel Committee felt were head and shoulders above the other individuals. I mean, as I just spoke, I mean, University of Toronto, University of Chicago for medical school, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, she definitely rose to the top.
And that's Chicago Medical School, not University of Chicago Medical School.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Any further questions from the council?
Who's the speaker? Can you identify himself for our record?
Oh, that's Marcel
Who's the
Road.
third one? Yeah, who's the third member? What's he-
John Lynn?
Never said his name.
No, he's Marcel. Road.
Did he? Oh,
He
okay.
did say.
I didn't hear that.
Any further questions from the council? Hearing none, we'll move to public hearing on bill number 80-23. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Seeing no one, we'll move to anyone in the room who wants to speak in opposition to this bill. Anyone online want to speak in opposition to this bill? Hearing none, may I have a motion on bill number 80-23?
Motion to pass.
Second.
A motion to pass was made by Councilwoman Drake. It was seconded by Councilman Schetzel. Any further council discussion on this bill? Seeing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 80-23 was passed by a vote of 9-0. That concludes resolutions. Next up is salary amendments. Clerk, will you please read the first salary amendment?
Bill number 72-23, an ordinance amending ordinance 115-22, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the numbers of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2023. Petitioner, Health Department.
Thank you. Committee report, please, Mrs. Drake.
Bill number 7523
We're on,
comes to...
we're on 72-23.
Oh, sorry, 7223 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner?
Hi, yes, this is Amy Rupie, Administrator with the Department of Health with offices on the 8th and 9th floor of the County City Building. And before you is a salary amendment for the county full-time health officer that we request an additional salary to $250,000. This is the amount needed from the start date at the end of July to the end of the year.
Thank you. Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearing on Bill 72-23. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Roy Sines, 426 South Mead Street. Good evening, council members. One of the concerns that seems to be happening that we've heard over the last 5 to 6 months is that we're trying to rein in the fiscal budget here. And giving a raise to a position of $100,000 seems like that's not reining things in. I think that's well on the way to, in addition with some of the other raises that have been done during this first 5 months of the year is quite significant. And, are we going to be continuing the raises? Who's next? Elected officials? Are we going to wait till the election process for them? Or what about the guys and gals on the ground in, say, the Parks Department or maybe in, hauling salt trucks around? So I'm just concerned that we're handing out raises and bonuses like candy on Halloween. So I would vote not in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Laura McClellan, 6344 Indian Point Road, Leroy Township, Ohio. I would like to speak against this bill, mostly because of the excuses that you can't afford to pay for certain other things in the county, and yet somehow you can pay a health officer $250,000 a year. Do you know how that compares to the rest of the entire United States? That is about the equivalent of what a health officer in San Bernardino County, California could earn, Sonoma County, California, Monterey County, California, Sutter County, California. The range, the average health officer salary in the United States is $64,000. And the very highest salary is $292,000. Are you going to tell me that now the cost of living in South Bend has changed so much in 30 years? I don't think that they really needed to earn that much back when I lived in Mishawaka. So I'm just questioning your, the way you speak about fiscal responsibility and not being able to spend the money on other important services that benefit the community. I have nothing against the health department or this person in particular, but I find it very, very strange that you have to pay this person this much. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition?
I do. My name is Tom Rowe, 26160 Lake Lane, South Bend, Indiana, zip 46619. I hear people speaking out against, okay? My concern is the protocol here is we can speak out, we don't get any responses. I get that. But at least can we have responsibility of this council that if there are concerns, that at least we get responses as to why this did not occur, what action was taken, what were the objections of the council to what's being presented here by people speaking out to the nay. Thank you.
I believe that's coming, sir, from the petitioner. Anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, petitioner, you have 5 minutes to rebut the comments that were made in opposition, if you so choose.
Dr. Serban, Director of Public Health. The salary seems very high compared to the average salary of workers in the United States of America. For even a, okay, the salary seems fairly high compared to the average worker in America, but the salary compared to the average starting salary for a new graduate in medicine, this is not a high salary. The inflation that's hitting all of America, for some reason, is hitting the medical establishment even worse. We've had starting new graduates in family medicine started salaries higher than that. It seems not appropriate, but that's just what the market is, unfortunately.
Dr. Serban, any comments on the statistical data that was just given by the previous speaker as far as the median average income or salary, I should say, of health officers around the country? And she spoke on, I believe she said the highest paid health officer in the United States is $292,000, and she named off a lot of places in California where the cost of living is obviously a lot higher. Can you comment on that at all?
Yeah, actually in California, you have more physicians per capita than you do here in Indiana. It's extremely difficult to get physicians to come to northern Indiana. In my particular group, the South Bend Clinic, trying to recruit physicians to come here it's unbelievably hard, and we have to offer salaries that are, in my opinion, excessively high to even get them to come and interview, let alone to come. All the young graduates want to move to California. They want to move to Denver, you know, kind of the cool places to live. South Bend, Indiana's, I guess, not cool. Also, most of the health officers in the country are part-time. Dr. Prasuta will be full-time.
That was my next question, because I guess I should have asked the speaker, because she quoted $64,000 a year, and that was my question. Was that part-time or full-time?
Yeah, most of the counties in Indiana, the health officer is part-time. They can be very part-time. What's the lowest?
10 hours, I think.
10 hours a week, a quarter-time position. This will be a full-time position. The hours are established from 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday.
Any other further council discussion on this bill?
Mr. Root,
Mrs. Drake?
I'd just like to make the point that our health officer by Indiana law has to be a medical doctor also, so that makes the salary higher automatically.
I guess I'd just like to say, so
Ms. Hess?
I know that, I understand that physicians coming out of medical school now, going into clinical settings or hospital settings are making $250K plus, but and that is a lot more demanding probably role than a public health officer. So I guess, is there any reason that that health officer would be paid, the governmental health officer, as much as somebody walking into a hospital setting as a physician?
Well, we are hoping that the commissioners and the council will be supportive of Senate Bill 4, and that is going to elevate the health departments throughout the state of Indiana to a new level and put responsibilities on the health officers, which they have not had before. And and we looked for a candidate that would be able to have the tools necessary to have the county health department succeed, and that is the candidate that we brought forth. So I understand your question, I understand what you're saying, and I think a year, 2 years, 5 years ago, I think that would have been the case. Assuming we get support for SB4, we're looking to position ourselves to no longer be at the bottom of the state of Indiana, which is at the bottom of the states in the country, and the governor with this new initiative is looking to move the state up in the rankings, and we're looking to move the county up in the rankings.
Well, I agree, I strongly agree with SB4 coming to the county. Indiana is ranked woefully low. St. Joe County, however, was ranked pretty high in the state under the previous administration. So hopefully we'll continue that, and I just, if the health officer is going to be allowed to do her job without encumbrance and micromanaging, I think that's a worthwhile salary.
Any further council discussion on this bill? Thank you. Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll on bill number 72-23?
Ms. Hess?
Yes. Where am I?
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
President Root.
Yes. Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 72-23 was passed by a vote of 9-0. Clerk, will you please read our next bill?
Bill number 75-23, an ordinance amending ordinance 115-22, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the numbers of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2023. Petitioner, Health Department.
Thank you. Committee report, please. Ms. Drake?
Mr. President, bill number 7523 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner?
Yes, again, this is a grant that we are wanting to use to bridge the gap between grants expiring and the appropriations going through the full cycle through the county council. This grant would be, or this fund would be fully reimbursed from the grants once they are appropriated. So this would be put back to its amount of $550,000 once the grants that are in limbo are approved.
Thank you. Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on Bill 7523. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Roy Sines, 426 South Meade Street. Again, greetings, council. You know, I've heard from Commissioners Dieter, Baxter, and members of this council that we should not be in the healthcare business. In a perfect world, we shouldn't be in the police or jail or juvenile incarceration or homicide business. But here we are, smack dab in the conversation about healthcare. I think it's a great job that the health department went ahead and was able to procure grants to help do some of the great work that they're doing. I'm also hoping that the new, very well-paid Director of Finance and HR will help the county achieve more grant achievement so that we can pick up the slack where the county may potentially cut some resources. Thank you.
Anybody else who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Thank you. The public hearing on this bill is now closed. May I have a motion on this bill?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion to approve was made by Councilwoman Hess. It was seconded by Councilman Morton. Any further council discussion on Bill 7523? Seeing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that Bill number 75-23 was passed by a vote of 9-0. That concludes our salary amendments for tonight. Next up is public hearing, public comment on fiscal matters. All fiscal matters were heard and discussed at our May 23rd committee meeting, and at that time, we had the presentations on these. So tonight, we will move to a public hearing on Bill number 71-23. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of any item in Bill 71-23? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor of any item in 71-23? Seeing no one, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to anything in 71-23? Please state your name and address for the council. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Roy Sines, 426 South Mead Street. And just to make sure that I'm addressing the correct thing, this is the listing of all
The listing of the appropriations.
the listing of the appropriations, correct? Okay, thank you. Again, I just want to address my concern about some of the wages and some of the increases that are obviously here, including obviously for the fiscal year of 2023, the $60,000 for the county health officer. Like Ms. Laura said, we have nothing against the county officer or position or the health department, but there is a concern about maybe that person's a little too overqualified for that position. If that's why we have to add another $60,000 to the budget for this year. Additionally, we can see some of the other wages that are going on as far as increasing in here. Just a general concern that we're not being fiscally responsible here. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition in the room? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, the public hearing on this bill is now closed. May I have a motion on this bill?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve was made by Councilman Fig. It was seconded by Councilman Schetzel. Any further council discussion on this bill? Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to draw a little bit of attention to Part B. Not because I'm necessarily in disagreement with approval of it, but the lit fund is being approved for legal services. And if I can so kindly do, I'd like to call attention to my outburst earlier for the redevelopment commission appointments and apologize for the comment made, but it does relate to this particular item because the litigation that we're in is related, at least tangentially, to in some cases, the lawsuits related to the redevelopment commission appointments. And I do think that the actions of the commissioners, while legal within the interpretation of state law, it can only really be interpreted as political posturing from the appointments that were made by the previous council. I take exception to the action, especially for the ability of the commissioners to undermine the appointments the council had previously made, potentially in perpetuity under the interpretation of the state statute used to remove those appointments. And I believe it's a glaring oversight that needs to be addressed by our state legislature. I requested as much of our area legislators to remedy this oversight with a bill addressing that section in Indiana code related to council appointments to the redevelopment commission. Whether or not I agree with the individuals who were appointed to the redevelopment commission originally or reaffirmed tonight, I believe our actions as a body earlier this year were done appropriately and legally. And well-intended or otherwise, any actions to undermine those appointments stands to do far more damage to the county by potentially negating the actions of the redevelopment commission thus far this year. I do think that the $600,000 is excessive. I do think it's at least partially self-induced by the actions of the commissioners and this body. And I do want to see us avoid those situations in the future by creating and acting on actions that were otherwise avoidable and unnecessary. That's my comment.
Thank you. Any further council comment on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 71-23 was passed by a vote of 9-0. That concludes the public hearing, public comment on fiscal matters. We will move next to land use planning. Clerk, will you please read our first land use planning bill?
Bill number 66-23, a resolution determining that the qualifications for an economic revitalization area have been met and declaring resolution number R9-23 of the St. Joseph County Council declaring an area of that county to be an economic revitalization area, confirming resolution. Petitioner, Prairie View High BTU LLC.
Thank you. Mr. Fig, committee report, please.
Yes, Mr. President, bill number 66-23 comes to full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner?
Terry O'Brien, Economic Development Planner for the Department of Infrastructure, Planning, and Growth, with offices on the 7th and 11th floor. The petitioner plans to invest approximately $30 million in equipment to capture landfill gas. This captured landfill gas will be converted to natural gas and then piped to Indianapolis, where it will be distributed to end users. A good example of end user would be Transpo. Staff is recommending a 5-year personal property tax abatement for this applicant.
Thank you. Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Is there a petitioner here to speak to the bill, or are you handling that?
They're online.
Is there any comment from the petitioner?
This is Diane Brown at Kinder Morgan, Inc., in the corporate office in Houston, Texas. And I just wanted to thank the council for considering this bill and look forward to working with y'all in the future.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the council for the online petitioner? Hearing none, we'll move to public hearing on bill number 66-23. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Roy Sines, 426 South Meade Street. First off, I'd like to thank the folks from the great state of Texas for looking at this for us for St. Joseph County, northern Indiana. I do have a question perhaps for the petitioner, which is there a reason that we're sending the gas resources down to Indianapolis instead of maybe somewhere local if there's not local resources, and that might make sense. But this does sound exciting. It's going to bring a couple jobs here. It is a 5-year tax abatement, which is fantastic. Hopefully, some of these things like this will also help us from eliminating other jobs that the council and commissioners are looking to do. You know, that income that this potentially will bring in is, you know, quite a few $100,000 in income. Hopefully, we don't lose other types of income like that that's produced here in our own county. I'm also curious if the commissioners and the council were going to donate any money for surveying that this petitioner might need, similar to what they did for Notre Dame and the Riverside development area as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition? Hearing none, public hearing on Bill 6623 is now closed. May I have a motion on the bill?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve was made by Councilman Schetzel. It was seconded by Councilman Tanner. Is there any further council discussion on this bill? Seeing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 66-23 was passed by a vote of 9-0. Will you please read our next bill, please?
Bill number 67-23, a resolution of the St. Joseph County Council declaring a portion of St. Joseph County an economic revitalization area pursuant to IC.6-1.1-12.1-1 at sequence declaring resolution. Petitioner Ed Coat, LLC.
Thank you. Committee report, please, Councilman Fig.
Yes, Mr. President, Bill number 67-23 comes to full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner?
The petitioner, Ed Coat, coats light gauged galvanized steel and aluminum coils for the building material industry. The petitioner plans to add 30,000 square feet to their existing building. The petitioner plans to invest approximately $14 million in new machinery, equipment, and tooling. This project helps the petitioner to retain its current workforce of 87 employees. And with this expansion, they anticipate adding an additional 40 jobs. Those 40 jobs will have an average wage of $28 an hour before benefits. Staff is recommending a 6-year real property tax abatement and a 5-year personal property tax abatement. And I have Mr. Williams here from Ed Coat if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioners from the council? Hearing none, we'll move to public hearing on Bill 67-23. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of it? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Roy Sines, 426 South Meade Street. This sounds pretty exciting. 40 new jobs. Hopefully, we don't lose 40 jobs from a different industry in this community. Over the next 4 years, that'll be new jobs of $2.3 million. That's pretty exciting. I like that. Hopefully, we don't lose that kind of revenue that's already in the county. These individuals seem to be working in some pretty dangerous stuff. Machines, equipment, chemicals. They're probably good middle-class working folks. Probably most of them 18 to 55-ish. Well, hopefully none of them gets hurt being around those chemicals or injured. You know, TBIs, mental illness, CTs. Because looks like their families may not have anywhere to put them here. But I do thank these folks for stepping up and including maps so that we knew what their property lines were going to look like, something that's probably done with most economic development. Again, 40 new jobs. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Seeing none, the public hearing on this bill is now closed. May I have a motion on Bill 6723?
Motion to pass.
Second.
Motion to pass was made by Councilwoman Drake. It was seconded by Councilman Tanner. Any further council discussion on this bill? Seeing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 67-23 was passed by a vote of 9-0. That concludes our land use and planning bills for tonight. Next up is unfinished business. Next up is new business, 2023 tax abatement review.
Good evening, Council. My name is Steve Dalton. I'm your financial advisor for the county, and Each year, I get the privilege of coming up here and reviewing the compliance documents for each of the companies that have built the projects they promised you they would build and that have employed the people that they've promised you they would employ over the last few years. You have 6 outstanding abatements with 6 firms that totaled up $674 million in investments over the last few years. I'm going to read those firms just because you have a sheet in front of you, but I think it might be good for the record. Alar Associates, St. Joseph Energy, Leidig Systems, Echo Properties, Unifrax, and Granger Water invested $674 million in this county and created, I didn't actually total up the number of jobs, but quite a few jobs. All of those companies submitted their annual compliance documents. All of those companies submitted exactly what they were supposed to submit according to their agreements with you, and therefore I'm recommending that all of those companies be approved. Here's the process. Each of those companies submitted a CF1 document for either their real property, their personal property, abatement, or both. That document needs a signature, and it needs that signature from your council president. So I would ask that you take a voice vote to authorize your president to sign each of those documents for those 6 companies.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Dalton from the council? Mr. Catanzarite.
Can you just run through the list of names of companies again?
Alar Associates, St. Joseph Energy, Leidig Systems, Echo Properties, Unifrax, and Granger Water.
Is Unifrax now Alcogen? Is that what I'm thinking of?
I think that you're right, yes.
Okay. So
They're filing
Unifrax-
under the original name, you're right.
Okay. They still file under the original name?
We asked them to file under both
Okay.
because they've changed names, and that was what the original document said.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the council? May I have a motion authorizing the president to sign those forms?
So moved.
Motion was made by Mr. Catanzarite. It was seconded by Mr. Morton. Any further council discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion passes. That concludes new business. Next up is old business. We have bill number 38-23. The public reading and the public comment were held at the March public meeting of the St. Joseph County Council. So tonight, we will have a motion, council discussion, and a vote on bill number 38-23. Is there a motion on bill number 38?
Mr. President, I make a
Mr.
motion
Figg.
to affirm the commissioner's resolution to close Portage Manor.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
A motion to affirm the resolution of the commissioners was made by Councilman Figg. It was seconded by Councilman Schetzel. Is there any further council discussion on bill 38-23?
Mr. Root,
Mr. Catanzarite.
given the complexity and the sensitivity to this issue, a lot of folks here in the audience tonight, I believe, are here about this issue. Would you consider a public hearing? That was my motion, or I was going to make a motion to that effect, but somebody else got to the motion before I did, and
You're free to make a motion.
Mr. Root, I'd like to make a motion that we conduct a public hearing tonight as part of Bill 3823, given the sensitivity and the importance of the subject.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to hold a public hearing on this bill again tonight, made by Councilman Catanzarite, seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any council discussion on the motion? Mr. Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Root. This may be more for Jamie than anybody. Simply as a point of order, I know that the public hearing was conducted in March. We did have a motion to continue, but did we have a motion at that time to close the public hearing? Or is that germane to the actions of the council tonight?
Yeah, so fair question. I don't have the March minutes in front of me. I don't remember the specifics. I can tell you that there is not a legal requirement to have a public meeting or public input on this resolution to begin with. As I recall, the public hearing was conducted by virtue of a motion to entertain public input, and then second, and it was carried.
And simply because, you know, I'm becoming a stickler for procedure.
Yep, no, you are on top of it, and I
Because
appreciate that.
Because the public hearing was opened, is there an obligation for us to officially close it? Or is it at the discretion of the chair to
Right,
close
so
it?
I believe that's at the discretion of the president or the chair.
Thank you.
But you're,
Any further comment on this motion?
oh, okay, Mr. Tanner, I'm just, for point of clarification, from your perspective, you're saying that the public hearing that was held in March was never officially closed?
And that was the point of clarification I was asking of Jamie, because it would have rendered any of the two previous motions moot if the public hearing was still open.
Okay.
But there are two motions standing on the floor.
Sure, so perhaps the cleanest approach might be for a motion to close the public hearing if there is some concern that it has not been closed and is necessary to close. I cannot say with certainty whether that's a required step or not. It may be prudent to do so, to have that extra level of certainty.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to close
Close what?
public hearing.
Motion on the floor now.
Is that what you want me to do?
Is there a,
Is that the proper, Robert?
there is a
call?
motion on the floor, so we'll need to vote that motion first. So any further comment on the original motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schetzel?
I would just like to comment that we've had hours of public comment on this particular item. We've heard public comment in almost every meeting that we've had since February. I believe we know what the folks in those audiences who are the folks who make up, some of them making up this audience, we know what they think. I do not think it is necessary to continue public comment.
Jen, public comment, people are only allowed to speak one time. Do we even have a record of who spoke at the public comment in March? You have that ready? Okay. Because they would not be eligible to speak again if the motion passes. But you might need it. All right, any further discussion on the original motion?
Can I hear the original motion again? Okay.
Go ahead, you
No.
want to state it again?
Mine was original.
No, Figs was the original motion.
That is correct. So, Mr. O'Brien, which motion takes precedent here?
So I think first, because Mr. Fig had a motion, I think Mr. Catanzarite's motion effectively modifies, and that the council should vote on Mr. Catanzarite's first.
That's my understanding as well. Okay. So we will take a vote on Mr. Catanzarite's motion. Mr. Catanzarite, would you like to clarify your motion one more time?
Yeah, my motion was to continue the public hearing or allow public input tonight because of the complexity and the importance of the issue. And a lot of things have changed since we had the original public hearing back in March. And there's a lot of uncertainty, I think, out there that remains, and that's why I suggest we have another public hearing.
Thank you. So we are voting on a motion to hold a public hearing. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Schetzel?
No.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
No.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Mrs. Drake? No. And President Root?
No.
The motion fails 4-5.
That motion has failed by a vote of 5-4. Mr. Thomas, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to close the public hearing from the original. Is that correct, Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, I think to the extent that it hasn't already been closed.
To the extent that it hasn't been closed, I'd like to make that motion to close the public hearing from the previous, Mr. O'Brien, the
It was
previous.
in March.
And the previous public hearing we had in March.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Thomas and a second by Councilman Fig to close, to the extent that we haven't already done so, the March public meeting. Is there any further comment on this motion? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Morton? Was it, no, okay. Mr. Fegg?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
No.
Mr. Catanzarite?
No.
Mr. Tanner?
At this point, yes.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
okay.
at this point.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
And President Root?
Yes.
Passes 6-3.
Thank you. That motion passes. We will now move to the motion made by Councilman Figg and seconded by Councilman Schetzel. Any further council discussion on that motion?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Well, this morning, or I guess it was yesterday, in my inbox, I received, I think we all received an email from Mr. Henke about touring a facility, Valley View, I believe. Apparently some counselors had requested a tour of that facility. I didn't know why there was a request for a tour of the facility until I saw that there had been something posted somewhere online that was being considered as a location where the Portage Manor residents would be moved. Apparently some counselors knew about it, I didn't, and so that was a surprise. I have some questions about using apparently Valley View as a nursing home or long-term care facility in Elkhart. I've maybe received bad information about it, but I heard that they have 50 beds open, which makes me question the facility right away. If it's a facility with 50 beds open, why would it have 50 beds open? I also had heard that the parent company, at least in Ohio, of Valley View, has been sued for bad labor practices, basically using indentured servant or modern-day slave labor in one of their facilities in Ohio. So I have lots of questions about that particular facility and the fact that was been discussed that moving residents from Portage Manor into a long-term care facility was not a solution to keep the community of people together. There seems to be a complete misunderstanding of the residents who live at Portage Manor, what their needs are, what the community means to them, how important this is. It's like ripping people apart. These are not people that should be warehoused. These are people who have lives and feelings and concerns and families who care. I know that there have been several communications coming through from family members with some very detailed information that was probably very difficult for these families to share about what the nature of the residents of these at the Portage Manor, what their situations are. These are not just people who would be homeless otherwise. These are people that need to be in a facility where there is care provided, mental health care. And at least this is another example to me of how there seems to be a total disregard for vulnerable populations and people with mental health issues in our county. First, the money, the ARP money, the American Rescue Plan money for the Behavioral Crisis Center was pulled back after we had passed it in December of 2021, the $2.7 million. Then no more money was allowed for Motels for Now because I think some people think it's some opium den or something, but in reality, this is a facility that has transformed over 100 people's lives, taken them from being a chronic homeless person on the street and put them into housing. So there seems to be, a complete disregard for the mental health in our community. And some of these people, if they don't want to go to this facility, they don't have to go. Would they become homeless again on our streets here in South Bend in St. Joe County? And sleeping in tents, sleeping on people's porches, ending up in jail, ending up dead, ending up in our emergency rooms, because that's what could happen. So I have some questions about this facility. I also was given, somebody sent me some information about some legal concerns when it comes to federal law regarding Federal Nursing Home Reform Act. the ADA, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, due process under the 14th Amendment, and Civil Rights Act. So I have some questions there. I also wonder why when the consultant in the report said that the plan that Dr. Atala put forward, if that had had 12 to 18 months to gel, would have been a good plan. So apparently the commissioners, 12 to 18 months ago, weren't concerned at all about looking for a plan that worked. They were looking for a plan to close it down. That's the feeling I have right now, that this was a 60-day stall that amounted to nothing, gave some people some false hope. And so I have lots of questions, so I can't support this. Sorry.
Any other further council comment on this motion? Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, President Root. I'd just like to make a point that the resolution that we're presented with is a blanket approval of the actions, including the resolution passed by the commissioners in February. It may not be important to some, it's important to me. There are certain inaccuracies in that original resolution that I don't support, and that may be not germane to the substance of what we're passing tonight, but it is irritating at the very least. In addition, the commissioners hired an additional consultant at a cost to the county to review the proposals made by the task force. That was provided roughly 60 days to come up with a game plan to keep Portage Manor open and continue to serve these individuals, this vulnerable population in our community, and was tasked to do so publicly, in open, with minutes, recordings, and it not only was done so that way, but also with continual updates to the commissioners in front of the news, with the public invited to the entire process. Meanwhile, it's obvious that executive sessions, additional consultancy fees, discussions by the commissioners, and actions by others who are in opposition of keeping Portage Manor open was clearly done behind the scenes, not in the public eye. And that is not, by any measure of the word, a good faith effort by anybody involved on that side of this discussion. Please, the chair will tell you, I'll reaffirm, let's keep order. I appreciate the support of the comments that I'm making here by those who are present, but at the same time, it's not going to change the minds of those who have already made up their mind. I find it to be a poor representation of what good government can, should be, and that we all deserve in this community. Regardless of what the outcome would have been if everything was done out in the public eye, that's the way it should have been, and we should have all been held to the exact same standard. And I'm disappointed in my peers, whether that be on this body, within the commissioners, or any of the consultants who were involved, to not include everybody in the process. That is a vast, vast failure of our local government for the public who cares so deeply about this facility, the people who are served by it, and those who have worked within it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further council discussion on this bill?
Mr. Root?
Councilwoman Drake?
I'd just like to say, I know a lot of people think that we come up here with our decisions made, but I think our last meeting proved that that isn't true. Joe and I, in particular, thought we would vote to close at our last meeting, or the meeting that we discussed Portage Manor. And I think, being new here, we wanted to hear you out completely, and that's why we agreed for public comment for everybody. And then we also thought, if there are any solutions that hadn't been discussed over the last few years that our county attorney looked for them, maybe they were out there in the community. All of us were engaged. Task force was engaged. The whole community knew what was going on. People had a chance to step forward. We initiated a lot of our own actions, talked to anybody who would come up and give us an idea, tried to answer any questions from family members. We tried to engage everyone, and in the end, we didn't come up with something even engaging the community that we thought would take care of the residents. And for us, it's not about Portage Manor, the building. It's about the people and making sure they have the proper care. And we just don't believe that's possible in the current building in the state that it is. And just last week, we heard about the option of this possible facility in Elkhart. And for all of us, I think we felt a surge of relief. They had closed a wing during COVID and wanted to reopen it for the Portage Manor residents, and they were excited about it. And they were trying to come up with ideas to get the Portage Manor residents enthusiastic. And it was really nice to see, and it was sincere. And there are a lot of people that have sincerely worked hard. The people that you think up here that don't care, we do care. And I know the family members, I'm looking at you all, and you know I talked to you. I talked to all of you when you called me. I responded to all of your emails. So voting today to close Portage Manor is not something we took lightly, and I just wanted to say that we do care about the residents there.
Any further council discussion on this bill? Mr. Thomas?
The Portage Manor residents deserve a safe, modernized home, and at the end, they deserve certainty regarding their future. Safety was an issue when I went in there. It bothered me, it disturbed me. Unsprinkled facility with scores of people was very upsetting to me. While we wanted to solve this problem, we wanted to make sure the community felt listened to. Our last public meeting in March, we listened for hours, and we were glad to do it, so we can make sure everyone, including the residents and the family members connected to Portage Manor, had the ability to speak. This is difficult. Because of what they said, we extended our Portage Manor decision by 2 months. And alternatives we could offer the Portage Manor residents. Members of the council, like Mark Catanzarite and other community leaders, joined in on a task force. That's what we should be doing. I worked with several people, in particular, the Commissioner Baxmeyer, Councilman Drake, Fig. We spent these last months meeting with stakeholders in our community. What are we missing? We met with professionals in this arena. They were the professionals guiding myself. I can't speak for everybody. I had to make this difficult decision. I'm not in this arena. We were also responsive to emails from taxpayers who wanted to give us their opinions. I feel we've done our due diligence. We engaged the whole community, but unfortunately, we still came up with very little ways of this solution. Dr. Attila brought up a possible plan for the future. We want to thank her so much for her passion on this project. However, the complicated licensing, government rules regarding what is necessary to create a modern-day center is too difficult to hand over to Dr. Attila. We owe it to them. We owe it to the Portage Manor residents to make this decision. Our duty is to the residents, not the building. Fortunately, we have identified a nearby partner that we truly feel has the best interest of our residents at heart. And we can offer them a safe, clean, and up-to-date facility. Most importantly, we can keep many residents who want to stay together with the Portage family. Furthermore, we are hopeful that many of the staff will be able to travel with them, making sure the residents can see familiar faces and they could rely on their care. We think this offers Portage Manor residents the most reliable path forward, a place that they could truly offer them a safe environment and the care they deserve. I want to thank the administrator of Portage Manor, Courtney Mullins, and her staff who have worked tirelessly, their passion, their dedication to the Portage Manor residents. Thank you, Mr. Root.
Thank you. Any further council discussion on this bill?
Yeah, I just
Ms. Hess?
So if Dr. Otala's plan was reasonable and looked good and looked possible, why not give it another 12 months to work out? Why the urgency to make it, to close it now, when it's been struggling for the last few years, and there is some question about some of the expenses that were in that budget, frankly, in my opinion. And so why not give that a chance? I don't understand why the timeline is, we can't do that. I mean, so that's one thing I'm questioning. And again, a facility is not the same as a home. And so that's what we're looking for, is a home for these people, not a facility. So I think that's part of the challenge there, in my opinion. And the other question I had, so we set aside X number of dollars, right, to rehouse these people. So that money will be going into Elkhart County to rehouse these people into Elkhart County and taken away from St. Joe County. Is that about $5 million?
Any further council discussion? Any further council discussion
Mr. Root.
on this bill? Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to draw special attention to the fact that the public that convened to come up with these potential solutions did so within 60 days. And even the consultant that was hired by the commissioners expressed that this was easily a 12 to 18-month process that would have had to have been undertaken. And it is it's laudable, the amount and the detail that was achieved within just those 60 days by those who volunteered their time, regardless of the level of experience and expertise that they had, some who had great expertise and experience to bring to the table. And then just to emphasize again, it was done in the public eye because these are public dollars that are being expended, whether it be the funds to move residents to a new facility, to close Portage Manor, or conceivably to keep it open. To that end, what do we do in government, especially local governments, with every department and every service that we provide? Is it break even? Is it make money? It's to serve the public good. That generally, almost exclusively and completely unilaterally costs taxpayer money. There is a cost and there is a utility to what amount of money is expendable and reasonable and a burden upon the taxpayers where it's worth it. Whether it's a couple miles of road being repaved, whether it's a park, whether it's a health service, whether it's our court system, whether it's Portage Manor, there is a cost to all of these services provided by our county. Yes, the facility needed tremendous investment. There were funds available and potentially still are. To the extent that it needs, depends on which numbers you're using. There is a cost to operating it, and in recent years at a loss, like every other department and every other service provided by our county. What is bearable by our community? What is bearable by this body to provide those services at a net benefit to our community? We are employing people at this facility. We are serving members of our community at this facility. We are keeping those dollars generally by income and otherwise in our community. And we are sending those dollars elsewhere. And we are sending those members of our community elsewhere. And we are not mitigating the future needs of future or existing community members who rely on a facility and service and staff that is currently provided at Portage Manor. Because of the statements that I made earlier, because of what I've just followed up with, I will unequivocally be voting no on this measure.
Any further council discussion on this bill? Mr. Catanzarite.
Mr. Root, thank you. Echoing what has been said by a lot of council members already tonight, we began this process most recently January 24th when a presentation was made to the county council during committee meeting, actually after our committee meeting, so in our informal session. And at that time, we had 5 freshman council members. And we were given an informal presentation at that portion of our meeting with no direction as far as, at this point, here's an ultimatum, we're going to close Portage Manor if you don't take action. Nothing was said to us to that effect, only to learn a couple weeks later that the commissioners were opting to close Portage Manor. Yes, we were given that reprieve, which was mentioned earlier, of 60 days or 2 months. But that nearly wasn't enough, as was stated by Jeff Stiffney, the hired consultant by the commissioners. I read through his report, because it did get forwarded to us eventually, and he said he spoke with several council members. I, for one, was not one of those council members he spoke to. So I don't think he reached out to everybody on the council. I know I wasn't one of them. I don't even know where the facility is, or if there is a facility being proposed for our residents from Portage Manor, as is being discussed tonight. So without knowing where the facility is, or what kind of facility it is, or touring the facility, I would be hard-pressed to vote tonight to make a decision as to where the welfare of our residents in Portage Manor is going to be given over to somebody. It sounds as if there has been a decision made about a facility, but again, the commissioners have not communicated that to us on the council that I'm aware of. I've not been spoken to, and I don't know if anybody else has. Maybe some were. It was mentioned during our task force meetings about the general welfare clause of our Constitution, why we exist in county government. I think Mr. Tanner just alluded to, why we exist, and we're not a profit-making venture. And Portage Manor for the long time was a net no cost to the county. In fact, in its early existence, it made money for the county. But what kind of a cost is acceptable for us to spend to take care of some of our community's most fragile partners? We're certainly in a good position fiscally. We've done a good job over the last several years to get the county in a great shape that it's in. We're sitting on several $1 million in a cash reserve, which we had never experienced before. That took a lot of hard work. We've gotten good news twice this year, once from our county treasurer, Tim Swagger, that we're going to get about 3 times more the investment interest that we had gotten in the past, to the tune of about $7.6 million. We just got good news from our county auditor and the state DLGF that our local income tax distributions are going to be much higher than we anticipated this year. So we're not cash strapped. I know somebody came up earlier and opposed some of the things we're doing and saying that we're trying to be fiscally restrictive, and we really, in this situation, we don't have to be. We're actually sitting in a good fiscal position. So the urgency to close Portage Manor really isn't there fiscally. We could wait this out. We've already got our budget for 2023 there. The facility could keep continuing to operate. We could fund Portage Manor and whatever excess it costs going forward for years to come. And I'm also, we're coming on the heels of this great news today. General Motors has decided to make St. Joe County their home for the Samsung General Motors battery plant. I kind of question what kind of message are we sending to people, like General Motors, with a vote tonight. If we do vote down or vote to affirm the commissioner's decision to close Portage Manor, what kind of message are we sending to General Motors and people like that who want to locate in our county about how we handle our county's most fragile residents? We've worked hard to get ourselves in this great fiscal condition, and I don't see the urgency to close it. As far as safety of the residents, I'm convinced the building is safe for the moment. It does need investment. We did make investments over the years, in the last recent years. We did put $500,000 into the building to upgrade and put in a state-of-the-art fire alarm system. It is there. We do have 4 brand-new boilers. Why would we make that investment in that building if we weren't going to continue to operate that building? That's kind of a waste of taxpayer money. I mean, it wasn't a waste because we improved the building for the residents that are there. We could take that same kind of approach and continue to improve Portage Manor. When the county had a friendly lawsuit filed in the late 80s against the commissioners because of improvements that were needed at Portage Manor, about $1 million was invested in Portage Manor, and it exists today. And it reopened in 1989 with a grand opening. What if we took $4 or $5 million, maybe $6 million of this excess revenue we have now, or the cash reserve we have, invested in Portage Manor? We could continue to keep the building open and operate it. I'm also in favor, maybe we aren't the best people to be in the position to operate, like the commissioners have said. Why couldn't we go back to a Health One type model, or do what Mr. Stiffney said and take 12 to 18 months to maybe find that right person to come in and operate Portage Manor, and maybe get it out of the county's hands, but keep the residents in our county or keep them in our facility? I think it's very doable. And just like Mr. Tanner said, I mean, I categorically cannot support closing down Portage Manor. I will not support this decision tonight to do so. I think we have the resources. I think we have the talent within our council and our community to come up with answers. Give us the time. Give us the 12 to 18 months that Mr. Stiffney recommends to come up with an answer and a solution, and I think it's more reasonable and more realistic. Thank you, Mr. Root.
Any further council discussion on this bill? Mr. Schetzel.
Thank you, sir. Yesterday, after several months of reading past studies on Portage Manor and commissioner reports from 2 years of studies, even though we just started talking about this in January, this has been something that this government has been working on for over 2 years. After visiting Portage Manor, multiple times, discussing the situation with local health care providers and Portage Manor staff, listening to testimony at council and commissioners' meetings, and reading the multitude of emails and online posts concerning the situation, my son and I visited another local provider that is currently taking care of 6 recently former Portage Manor residents. The facility has many of the same amenities that Portage Manor has, with upgrades in many areas when compared to Portage Manor. While visiting this facility, my son and I saw 3 residents that were formerly of Portage Manor. All 3 of them were smiling and engaged with the staff as they enjoyed an activity. I walked away from the facility somewhat relieved that Portage Manor residents are acclimating to new surroundings in a joyful way. I would also note that this particular facility has call buttons in each patient room and a building-wide fire suppression system. As a councilman, my greatest obligation is to the taxpayers of my district and then of the county. Given the financial realities of upgrading and possibly replacing Portage Manor, as well as operating the facility, the answer to our current dilemma, which has been created by decades of inaction by the County Council and Commissioner's Office, seemed clear to me. I only needed to know that the current residents would be taken by facilities capable of caring for them. In February, Deb Lambert of Byron Health, assured us that she would work to place every resident in an appropriate facility. Today, I am even more sure that Portage Manor residents will have the opportunity to live in an appropriate setting. Finally, I would like to say that Dr. Atella certainly has a heart for those under her care and her fellow human being. However, I agree with the commissioners that her application left out important information in areas such as board composition, licensing, staffing, and other areas. So for those reasons, I vote yes to affirm the commissioner's resolution.
Any further council discussion on this bill?
Mr.
Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is purely out of curiosity. Perhaps Jen can help us if I'm incorrect, but just scanning briefly, what I see on our attendees on Zoom and in the room, none of the petitioners are present. None of the commissioners are represented directly. And I don't know if it's appropriate to vote on the matter without the petitioner present. We've, and other bodies that I've been involved with have chosen not to take action without the petitioner speaking, and I could be wrong. One of them could be joining us by Zoom. But that's my observation at this time.
Mr. President, so the commissioners were here at the March meeting. They made their presentation. In fact, they were the ones who requested that the matter be tabled. They didn't provide any additional information. Their presence was here, or was noted in the minutes for the March meeting. I believe it's appropriate to vote on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Mr. Root?
Mr. Catanzarite?
As to Mr. Schetzel's comments, just, Mr. Schetzel, which facility, you said a local facility you went to? Somebody, they were here in our county, the residents you went and visited?
You're asking me what facility I went to?
No, you said a local facility. When you said local, do you mean here in St. Joseph County?
Local, I mean, it's a 25-minute drive.
So not in St. Joe County? Okay, all right.
Thank
And then you did make the comment about Dr. Atala not having the licensing. I don't believe this facility has the licensing either for RCAP residents, from what I've been told. So they have to apply for that license. And so, to me, it's almost unfair that 30 questions or so were unanswered by Dr. Atala because she couldn't get the licensing because she wasn't the owner or didn't have a facility in place yet. Yet we're looking at a facility to send our residents to, but isn't licensed either, but we're going to allow them to get the licensing they need. But we weren't going to allow her to get the licensing. And that's not your decision. I mean, that was the commissioner's decision. But from what I've been told, they aren't licensed for, for RCAP as well, which is the type of patients that most residents of Portage Manor are. They're not Medicaid eligible, they're not Medicare eligible, but they're RCAP patients. And I did mention in my earlier comments too, I mean, we could maybe take this position, if we could afford, which I think we can afford to do it for a couple of years or a year or so, and keep paying a little bit more than what they already receive. They're almost self-sufficient, with the exception of maybe $400,000 to $800,000 a year, depending on what number you should look at. But we still haven't gotten the state of Indiana to ante up and come up with more funding for this. I mean, if we still get we get Indiana, the state FSSA to come up with, say, $70 per day for a per diem for each resident that lives there, I mean, Portage Manor would be definitely in the black. I mean, more than they are in the red. So, I mean, that's another thing we haven't considered. So I wish we would all at least consider that. It's a big decision. It's something we don't take lightly as a council, but I think it's something we probably ought to consider, at least giving the due diligence and the time that's needed to make something like this happen, like Mr. Stiffney suggested.
Thank you. Any further council discussion on this bill?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd also like to add, and I appreciate Mr. Tanner's watchful eye here, that this is actually not a resolution from the commissioners. They presented their information at our meeting in March, but this is actually a council's resolution. And if you look on the agenda, I think it probably reflects council is the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
No.
Mr. Catanzarite,
Definitely no.
Mr. Tanner,
No.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel,
Yes.
Mr. Morton, President Root.
Yes.
Passes 5-4.
Let the record show that bill number 38-23 was passed by a vote of 5-4. That concludes old business. Next up is privilege of the floor, limited to 3 minutes to any item not on the agenda tonight. Please state your name and address for the record. Again, you have 3 minutes to address any topic that is not on tonight's agenda.
Pam Clays, 1106 Bellevue, South Bend, Indiana. I hope these items are not on the agenda. I have a question about ARP funds. Are we allowed to transfer funds that were given to St. Joe County to another county? That does not seem right to me. That's the feds giving us money. They gave St. Joe County money. They didn't give any other county money. The other item I would like to speak to is that it seems like there have been meetings behind closed doors that residents, taxpayers, and voters are not aware of. I heard a rumor that there was a facility in Elkhart, and I'm happy to give the name, and I'm happy to tell you that there's a big red box that says Special Focus Facility. This home has a documented history of poor care and is being closely monitored by Medicare.gov. And this refers to Valley View Healthcare. If that's the place that we're thinking about putting our people, that would be absolutely wrong. It's a 2 out of 5 star. It's the first thing I saw.
Ma'am, you are out of order. You are now addressing a topic on tonight's agenda.
Well, I appreciate you at... No, Valley View wasn't mentioned, and neither were the ARP funds. Is that legal to transfer those money from one county to another?
And I let you go on that topic. You were correct, but then you started addressing...
Well, then I'll take all that back.
Okay, thank you.
But let's address the issue of the ARP funds. Are we allowed to give that money to another county? That just don't seem right. And I'll leave that question with you, but I would seriously consider that. We don't want to get in trouble with the feds.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Ray, President, CEO, South Bend Regional Chamber with offices at 101 North Michigan, Suite 300 here in South Bend. Just here to say thank you for your leadership on the GM electric vehicle battery plant. We had an exciting announcement in St. Joseph County, largely related to the good work that each of you have done to help us get this to the finish line. But also, would be remiss to not mention your predecessors as well. So as Councilman Nolan, Councilman Kanareki, Councilman File, and Bobby Kay, Councilman Krasinski, I always struggle with that, all played significant roles also in getting us to the finish line. The commissioners played a critical role. Former Commissioner Castellani, the current commissioners, the county team led by Bill Shalio, Phil Garrett, Steve Dalton, a critical partner is in our discussions. The town of New Carlisle now, and Olive Township in particular, important partners in this endeavor. I think the county council listened to many of the concerns that had happened out there. We have a better project because you asked great questions throughout this process, and we tried to provide transparency and clarity, a couple of things that you asked us and demanded of us as that project was moving forward. The county legal team, I mentioned Phil Garrett, Mike Mish, Jamie O'Brien, everybody as well. I could go on. Our utility partners, a lot of folks made this happen. I hope you had a chance today to sit back and enjoy the important role you played in getting us here, and I just wanted to come tonight and say thank you.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Yes, Darrell Heller, 425 Lamont Terrace, South Bend. I want to say congratulations to Councilwoman Amy Drake and those of you who hold far-right, ideologically extreme views. She and her ilk, those of you, successfully have driven Dr. Bob Einterz, the former county health officer, and now Cassie White, the former director of the Health Equity Epidemiology and Data Unit out of the department. These health officials, both experts in their field, work tirelessly to increase the health outcomes of all county residents and rightfully focus their attention on those who are the most vulnerable and historically marginalized by taking steps to address negative social determinants of health. This can only be done effectively by looking at public health through an equity lens, recognizing that those who are living under the weight of systemic racism, are living on low incomes, and who are housing insecure have different needs than those who are white, middle class, have health insurance, and easy access to healthy food. You don't see or believe this because you don't have to. You are not affected by such disparities and almost certainly have not spent time with those who are so affected. This, council members, is the ultimate exercise of privilege and serves to reproduce the very inequities you deny exist. I'm not sure how to respond to people like Councilwoman Drake, who believes that equity is a Marxist term that somehow is committed to pushing a left-wing agenda that wants to slip critical race theory through the back door and redistribute wealth. In case you're unaware, which you seem to be, systems of power and white supremacy are real, unlike reverse racism, which is not a thing, because existing systems of power are deeply rooted in the history of white supremacy. As a historian, I would be happy to trace the development of this if you're interested. Equity, understood by those who are not pushing a political ideology, is understood to be based on need, not race. For example, the expanded Narcan distribution that the council belatedly approved will mostly benefit white people in the rural sections of our county. but not because they're white, but because they have the greatest need for expanded access. I'm furious and ashamed of what you are doing to the health of this county. In exercising your power, you are forcing your narrow, distorted view of equity and justice onto all of us. You claim to care about the health of this county, but you only love it to the extent that it is shaped in your image, which unfortunately excludes many of us who are not of your race, class, and privilege. Thank you.
Cheryl Nix, 17901 Sable Ridge Drive, Clay Township. The South Bend Tribune published an article on June 11th, 2023. It read in part, "The St. Joseph County Health Department is suddenly losing key employees. As of June 8th, 8 positions at the county's job site were posted, including the health officer. Thankfully, we now have a new health officer. But sources for this story suggest there could be at least 1 or 2 more departures than that. 2 of the departing staff cite anxieties and uncertainty after political leaders questioned the focus of their work, health equity. As you recall, we have an opportunity to opt into SB4 and bring nearly $3 million to St. Joseph County, but the application is due September 1st. Dr. Serbin is leaving at the end of July, and I'm very concerned about these key people leaving our health department when this money could flood our county with much-needed dollars." The South Bend Tribune continued, "The potential windfall would require a set of core services and standards which has made certain conservative leaders nervous. Republican Amy Drake, who is my county representative, who sought her county council seat because she saw local mask mandates for COVID-19 as an overreach of the department's power, has written commentaries that slammed Governor Eric Holcomb's funding effort as a power grab. Once again, the problem with this argument, and Ms. Drake, I must say, your statement at the State House is that the mask mandate, as you well know, was issued by county council ordinance. The health officer never issued a mask mandate, never issued a vaccine mandate, and never issued a single fine to any business. Again, the complaint against the health department is based on a false premise that they overstepped their authority. The health department did not issue a mask mandate and did not close a single school. They did run vaccine clinics that were praised by everyone involved. And the decision about who got vaccines first, old people like me. Why? Equity. Why? We were dying more than everyone else. My children were thrilled that I got my vaccine and my 80-year-old husband got his vaccine before they did. Equity. Another concern stems from this word, health equity. And Cassie White resigned. She said somehow equity has become a 4-letter word. As she wrote in her viewpoint, our pursuit of health equity focuses on ensuring that everyone in St. Joseph County has the opportunity to live a healthy life. The toxicity created by the relentless ideological assault by our county leaders has devastated the morale of a highly effective team. So, in conclusion, just last Tuesday, Sky Metters was asked, how do you decide where to pave roads? He said, we have a rating scale 1 to 10, 1 being the worst. We pave the worst roads first, the ones that need it. That sounds equitable to me. Thank you.
Craig Coburn McDonald, 6223 Winslow Court, South Bend, Indiana. You know, I really thought you guys wanted to be better than other counties around here, not following their bad decisions. I thought that was the whole deal. I've heard that from you many times, but yet we're doing things the same way. You know, it's your job to listen to the people, and it doesn't sound like you're doing your job. You have chosen lies over truths. You have chosen politics over people. You've chosen land deals over love. And yet, you just stuck it to the most vulnerable of all of us. You continue to do exactly what the people don't want you to do. Just like Juday Creek, just like the damn barn on Anderson Road. Nobody wants it. When are you guys gonna listen to us? We see what you're doing and we don't like it. That's why we're up here talking to you guys about it. But when are you guys gonna listen to us and what we want? I just don't see it. And I'm sorry for you guys. We got to suffer with it, but you guys will too eventually.
Julie Calhoun, 51517 Haverhill Court, South Bend. As you can see, I've made this sign because it is the Good Old Boys Club. It is. You have the money. You have $9 million in the county reserves.
20.
Pardon me?
20 plus.
20, oh, I thought it was 9. I get confused.
Nine's the new money.
Okay. Why can't you simply pluck that money out, use it for Portage Manor? You have the money.
Ma'am, you're
Oh,
out
I
of order.
forgot. I'm sorry.
Portage Manor was
I'm
on the
sorry.
agenda.
I forgot. I'm sorry. I would like Roy Sands to be nominated for Citizen of the Month by Derek Dieter because he did an excellent job up here going back and forth and his brilliant questions. And speaking of brilliance, I would wish Tony Flora, my former union steward at Olive Street Post Office when I was a carrier, was around because he would find a way to make you all accountable. That would be Mr. Thomas, Drake, Schitzel, Root, and Fig, and Dieter, and Baxmeyer. He would. I don't know how. He was amazing. Do all you know him? Okay. He knew everything inside out, upside down, sideways. And I wish he was here, but I'm sure he's listening. Also, mental illness and homelessness they go hand in hand in our county. I've sent you pictures around town, post office, Cleveland 31, and I'm sure there's others, of course, I don't know because they're intense, they're hiding because they don't know where else to go. PM was a good place, okay? What else here? Let's see.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time to maintain order, please.
Well, my quote was from George Carlin, and I love George Carlin, and I had it ready to play, but I messed it up when I was shaking and holding my signs, but basically, it's a good old boys club, and we're not in it. And you guys, some of you are, and please do the right thing. And I know you closed it, but I said it again, so.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Say a prayer, please, for all of us. Thank you.
Dan Caruso, 305 Compton Street, New Carlisle. I wasn't going to speak. Then I heard my friend Tony Flora. What a man. And there was a question asked a couple of speakers ago. When are you going to change? I'm guaranteeing you there are people in this room that did not vote. That's when they're going to change. When you don't like what some of these people up here are doing, this stuff, you vote. You don't sit on your hands. You don't be part of the 20,000 who didn't vote in the last election cycle, and you get some of these people who are doing opposite of what you want them to do, and then when you point it out, they don't listen to you. It's time to take the blame yourself for not voting. Let this be a lesson. Anytime there's a chance to vote, it's America. There's places in this world where they're not given a chance to vote. They're not given a part in the government. We have a part in this government here. We can say who sits up there. We can do that on Election Day, and we can get rid of those bad people that we don't want up there. Thank you.
Jenny Piontek, 2201 Riverside Drive. I'm not really familiar with politics. I've always tried to stay away from it. I don't like it. But this really, I mean, when people have mentioned power grabs, which, Amy, I think you brought that up, this seems like a power grab. I mean, you have the money to fix the building. Sorry. Okay. Oh, okay. There's a nice, big load of money that could be used to really help people out that need help. I cannot believe that I don't know what to say. I mean, I can't believe it. And I'm super disappointed, and I still hate politics.
Tom Rowe, 26160 Lake Lane, South Bend, Indiana, 46619. I'm retired. I'm a veteran. Fortunately, I still keep myself engaged in Veterans Affairs by being a mentor at St. Joseph County Veterans Court. I go up and I meet with vets that need support. What I'm concerned about is, when did equity, inclusion, and diversity become almost verboten words for some people? Thank goodness when I attended, it's just a new group that's meeting in town at the roof, okay, and just starting up with that. And anyways, if I could find it again, I would. Yeah. We had, on Monday, we had a veteran military coffee and breakfast. The St. Joseph County Veteran Health Equity Coalition is holding our second meeting. I attended it because we're trying to diversify and help people that need it, okay? And there needs to be agreements on what the word equity truly means. I leave it up to you as council members to decide that, because I already have my own definitions. Thank you.
Pastor Mark Huffman from Smith Memorial Chapel. I've been attending some of these meetings a lot recently, and it confirms my decision that I don't want to run for any kind of elected office. But one thing I do know from what I do is that Jesus said, "Sell what you have and give to the poor." I'm Mark Huffman, and I approve this message.
Laura McClellan, 6344 Indian Point Road, Leroy Township, Ohio. You'll notice I am not a resident of St. Joe County, but luckily I am allowed to speak, which is great because I represent my brother Edward, who is not emotionally capable of speaking for himself. I would like to read something to you from Indiana Code. The purpose of this chapter is to provide necessary and prompt assistance and care without stigma to the citizens and residents of Indiana who are entitled to avail themselves of this chapter's provisions, especially those having little or no resources and low-income persons or the homeless or unattached, or those requiring care and support or nursing beyond the capacity of the family home in situations not requiring hospitalization or other medical treatment or care in other state and county institutions. This chapter shall be liberally construed so that its purposes may be accomplished as equitably, economically, and expeditiously as possible. This is Indiana Code, Title 12, Article 30, Chapter 3, Section 28. I know you can't respond necessarily to me, or you're not required to, but I'd like to know if any of the council members have bothered to read the code, the state laws that they live by. Excellent. We have a hand. That's wonderful. I think you all know what I'm talking about. I'm lucky that I am financially able to drive the 5 hours here from my home. 5 hours, you know, it's a long drive for me. I don't really like driving. But some things are worth it. I bet you can guess what I think is worth it. I don't know what else to say. I think you guys and the commissioners who voted are cowards because you won't say the real reason.
Robin Chandler, 25612 Shorewood Court, South Bend, Indiana, 46619. I just want to talk about people who may have privilege and do not know what it means to not have a place to live. You know, you talked about you would never be at a place maybe that wasn't to your standard. You know, some people have to go to a hotel and stay at like the Motel 6, right? It may not be the best place. Some people get to go and stay at the Hyatt. I don't know. Maybe that's some of you. But the point is that if somebody had the option to stay at the Hyatt, they would. Obviously, the Motel 6 serves a purpose. Having so much privilege that you can't even see the fault of what you're doing is viscerally upsetting. To attack citizens on Facebook posts and you're an elected official is outrageous. Outrageous. I cannot believe that we have $20 million and we can't do what should have been done years and years and years ago to take care of a home for people.
Hi, my name is Christine Galvis, and I know you have seen me up here before. My address is 17837 Bridgeview Drive. At the last commissioners' meeting, I said I was a preservationist, and I am. Many of you are way too young to remember any of the buildings that have been knocked down in South Bend, Indiana. The Morris was saved by Mrs. Morris, thank God. Look at it, what people have, or what the county has put into the Morris Civic Auditorium. And I'm sure all of us have had the opportunity to go there for their fabulous programs. Where would South Bend be without the Morris Civic Theater? We have knocked down all of Michigan Street, which is where the First Source Bank is. We have knocked down the Oddfellows building, and many of you are way too young to remember any of this. It was done in the 60s and 70s. We have knocked down the Pick Oliver Hotel, which was a true gem. One of my relatives is lucky enough to have salvaged some of that stuff, the beautiful woodwork and everything out of that building. He doesn't have everything, but he has beautiful stuff that he put in his brand new home. We, as a community, don't treasure our historical buildings. I lived in Charleston for 3 years, and that man should not go to Charleston, he'd be kicked out, because he doesn't like history. He doesn't like saving history. We've had the discussion regarding it. We need to save our history. We need to save our buildings. You just don't understand. When I lived in Charleston, and this isn't about me, but when I lived in Charleston, I was lucky, and I was really right across the bridge though in Mount Pleasant. I was lucky enough to be a tour guide in the house on the Battery that were right across the water, the bay. The Civil War started. When anybody came to town to visit me, I said, we're going to Fort Sumter. We have our own Civil War here in South Bend, St. Joseph County, trying to save buildings, trying to save our history. I just can't believe that our councilmen, our council people, some of them, and our commissioners don't see the viability in historic buildings. Thank you.
Roy Signs, 426 South Meade Street. Well, well, well. What a conundrum we have. What a situation we found ourselves in again. Here's the county. Before we start, I'd like to welcome this man back home, our Vietnam veteran. Yes. 20 years ago today, I was in Iraq defending our freedom. Me too. Got another one there. There's a special breed of veteran called all of them, that their purpose is defend people that cannot defend themselves. There's a certain population that follows that as well. This morning, I was informed by a councilman after the commissioners' meeting that their interactions with me were not pleasant. You know what? You're right. Yep, Mr. Schatzel was like, yep, that was me. You're right. Ms. Drake, Commissioner Baxmeyer, Commissioner Dieter, Attorney Mish have not had pleasant experiences with me over the last 5 months, and there's a reason for that. My whole life is defending against bullies, and I don't appreciate what has happened with Portage Manor residents. Sorry, that's my one. I'm not afraid to take punches, but don't crap on my uncle's yard and expect him to clean it up. That's what has happened over the last several years with a certain building in this town. When elected officials use their position to gaslight and influence private business in a negative way, hurting them and their families through intimidation, you will not have a pleasant experience with me. Mr. Satchel, I did not know you before January. We were not friends. At this point, I don't think that we probably ever will be. But what I do not appreciate is you taking the courtesy of your time to look me up on Facebook, some might call it cyberstalking, make comments on my post. Not only is it creepy, but hopefully that's reserved for your political opponents and not for your other career. But if you're on my page and you come at me, you're right. You're not going to have a pleasant experience. Most of you all chose to become elected officials. And if you crap on the constituents, they have the legal right to express their dismay. It's called the First Amendment. As my mama used to say, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to take advantage of privilege of the floor? Seeing no one, we'll move to online. Is there anyone online who wishes to speak? Seeing no one, privilege of the floor is now closed. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn made by Councilman Figg, seconded by Councilman Schetzel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned.